So you are seeing me very raw today. I've literally just gotten up a little while ago. It's about 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I have spent the last 36 hours in bed. I've been horrendously ill. I don't know what it was. It's obviously some kind of gastro bug. And Matt is away. So I am actually going to go down to see Matt today because he's been away for over a week now. And he's going to be away for about another week and a half. So, Bobby. So as he's only a couple of hours away, I thought I might go down to see him tonight, spend the night with him there, because we miss him, don't we? We miss him. And then I'll come back tomorrow afternoon. That's what we're doing today, isn't it? I mean, last night I was still not great, but I was well enough to at least get some fresh pajamas out and change the bedding so that that was clean and fresh. I just hate that feeling of when you've been sick and your bedding's just... Ugh, you've just been in your bed for so long. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. We're going to head down to Byron Bay, or actually just a little town outside of Byron Bay called Ballina, and I will take you along with me. Anyway, I don't really need to pack that much because I'm only going for one night. So I do know that we will probably go to the beach. So I'm just packing a sarong, a pair of shorts and a swimsuit, though, you know, I'm skeptical about that because it is likely to be quite cold and I probably won't feel like swimming, but we'll see. And I think other than that, all I really need to take is some toiletries, sunscreen obviously, and my pajamas, which I'm still wearing, so I need to get changed out of those. Right, so I'm all showered and dressed. I decided to also throw in this big chunky knit. It's the most ginormous cardigan I've ever owned. So I think that's about it really. I think I'll just quickly pack some toiletries. I better get moving, otherwise I'm going to be late because Matt finishes work at 11 and I want to be there by 11. I'm just taking some samples. These aren't for wearing necessarily. It's not like I'm thinking that I'm going to need all these perfumes to wear. These are just sort of samples and decants that I've been thinking about reviewing. So I thought I might take some strips and then maybe see if I can film a little video or something while I'm down there. I love how Poppy has been looking so depressed this entire time because she thinks she's going to be left behind, but you're not going to be left behind, are you? You're going to come with us. Yeah. And after 2 days of basically not wanting to do anything with makeup, I just feel like I want to look maybe not so crappy. And that obviously means I'm going to have to brush my hair as well, but that's fine. I just want to cover up these dark circles as best I can because I do still look really tired and washed out. I know Matt doesn't care what I look like, but that doesn't mean that I don't care. Right, maybe a little bit of mascara if I can find it. There it is. I'm really not good at doing this sort of thing in a rush. I almost always end up poking myself in the eye with the mascara one. Oh yeah, and I've just got it all everywhere. Maybe a tiny, tiny bit of blush. I have to be really gentle with my cheeks at the moment because I don't know if this is a thing, but because I've basically been in bed for 36 hours and I'm mostly a side sleeper, sadly. I wish I was a back sleeper, but I'm just not. My cheeks are really, really sore. It's like I've been punched in the face. And last night I had like a huge, big sort of, it looked like I had been hit in the face or something. I had like an egg on my face. Obviously all the fluid had sort of drained there. So yeah, it didn't look great. It's still quite sore today on both sides. Oh, that'll do. Just need to quickly do my eyebrows. Oh my God, I think I've just discovered a grey hair in my eyebrows. What? Wow, now I do feel old. And I did say that I was going to put sunscreen on the back of my hands. Drive. Find zinc to be really good for that because obviously you're washing your hands throughout the day, so you want something that'll stick more. And also you don't tend to notice, well, I don't tend to notice the white cast that much on the back of my hands because I'm Captain Snowflake after all, but yeah, I don't tend to worry about it so much. I don't like using zinc on my face because I hate the smell of it. It smells, I don't know, it just stinks. I don't like it. I thought I would share this. I hadn't even finished loading up the car, but Poppy's making sure she does not get left behind. Okay, welcome back. It's the next day. I didn't end up filming any more yesterday because by the time I got down here, I was just not in the headspace to film anymore. But yeah, I got stuck in really bad traffic yesterday and it took ages to get down here. And I'm really dreading the drive home this evening because I have a feeling it's going to be more of the same. So I'm in the backyard of the house that we're staying at. I didn't want to film inside because it's somebody else's house. So it's fair to say that I'm feeling pretty much fully recovered. I actually ate breakfast this morning, which was really nice. We also had some fish and salad for dinner last night, which Matt made, and it was absolutely beautiful. And that was the first meal I had eaten in about 50 hours. So yeah, it was great. Anyway, I'm here to talk to you about some perfumes. So two fragrances that I want to talk about today are God of Fire and Lady Whitesnake, which are both by Stefan Humbert Lucas, or Humbert Lucas, I don't know how you say the name. These samples were given to me by my friend Emma. I have been sort of really curious about God of Fire because I've been hearing a lot about it, and it sounded like something that I might like, particularly given where I live in the subtropics. It's usually pretty warm here. And over the summer I was hearing about this one and I thought it sounded really lovely. I wasn't obviously prepared to blind buy it. I'm really glad I've been able to get a couple of samples of it and I have some thoughts. I definitely haven't worn these extensively, but I feel like I've got the general gist of it. I'm just going to spritz God of Fire on my arm again. So the opening of this one is quite fruity and spicy and green. It's like you've just sort of broken a fruit off a vine or broken a stem of a plant or something like that. Or actually it's kind of a little bit like you're walking through the bush and you're stepping over vegetation and breaking it with your feet, crushing it with your feet. So it's that kind of greenness that's coming up at me in the opening. It's a little bit almost minty, but I don't think there's a mint note necessarily in here. It just has that really fresh green smell that isn't too sharp. The fruit that I get in the opening is primarily citrus. Okay, let's try this again, shall we? I ended up having to change my SD card. So as I was saying, the fruit that I get in the opening of this is largely citrus, primarily lemon, I would say, but I wouldn't classify it as lemon juice because it's not as sparkly as that. I'd say it feels like a bit of a mix of what you would get with lemon rind and a bit of the juice as well. So it's not super dark or oily or dense or bitter like lemon rind, but there is a little bit more body to it than, say, just that sparkly juice element that you get in most citrusy fragrances. When Matt got a whiff of me this morning, he thought he picked up blackcurrant. I don't get blackcurrant necessarily myself, but I do get where he was coming from with that because there is a bit of shadow to this fragrance, even though I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a dark fragrance by any means, but there is a slight bit of shadow to it in that opening, which just keeps it from being a really light, bright, citrusy opening, which is interesting because throughout the wear, I feel like it gets brighter throughout the wear, but it starts darker and spicier. After about 10 to 15 minutes, I do feel like I start to get a little bit of that mango peeping through, as well as a little bit of the berry note, but primarily mango. And it starts to get sweeter, but I wouldn't necessarily classify this as a sweet fragrance. But there is an element of sweetness which naturally comes from those fruity, juicy sort of notes. What I get from that mango is a slight tartness coupled with a creaminess. But the creaminess isn't like a dessert whipped cream sort of note. Certainly not like the creamy notes that you get in, say, a Love Tuberose from Amouage. I feel like the sweetness is more coming from the fruit, and that the creaminess is not actually that sweet in and of itself. So immediately my mind goes to a mango lassi, where I think of that creaminess as coming from an unsweetened yogurt that is blended with a really sweet, ripe mango, as well as maybe some lime or lemon or something like that. So the effect of that is that even though it's creamy, it doesn't get sickly, which is really interesting. So that makes it really quite enjoyable and wearable in warm weather. In the deep dry down, I'm sorry, I'm trying to dodge this sun here. In that deep dry down, which doesn't take very long, I might add, I'm left more with a musky, woody base, which is not that exciting to me, to be honest, but it's pleasant enough. But for me, the star of that show is that stemmy green, spicy ginger, citrusy opening, especially at that point where it's starting to get to the mid and you're starting to get a little bit of that mango peeping through as well. That is like the sweet spot of this fragrance for me. It is just quite simply mouth-watering. I really am enjoying my sample of this fragrance. Because of the fruitiness, I don't know if I can see myself reaching for this regularly because I'm not really a fruity fragrance person. I do have a couple of fruity, floral leaning fragrances in my wardrobe, and I feel like they are sufficient for me for whenever that desire hits that I want something fruity. So I don't know if I really need a bottle of this. However, I am considering maybe getting a decant of this so that I can wear it for a little bit longer, because I'm pretty much almost done with this sample. Poppy has just placed a ball in front of me. But suffice to say, even if I can't see myself getting a full bottle of this, if you like your fruity scents and you also are quite partial to a gourmand that leans a little bit creamy, and you also don't mind a bit of spice, a bit of zest, and a bit of greenness to your fragrances, then this is definitely one worth checking out. As for performance, it's hard for me to say because, you know, when I did my full wear this morning, I basically then went for a walk with the dog and with Matt. And it was warm, so I probably burned off a lot of the fragrance a lot more quickly than I otherwise would have. But my gut feel is that you might get maybe a decent 4 hours out of it, and then after that it's probably getting into that musky, woody territory, which again I didn't dislike, but it wasn't my favourite part of the fragrance. So, you know, it probably would have fared better than it did had I been wearing it under different circumstances. But it's probably something I would be wary of if I was going out to buy a full bottle and if performance was important to me for that price tag. Okay, I'm really trying to get a decent shot here. This might be difficult because Poppy wants me to throw the ball and I have to throw it that way, not that way. Actually, I could throw it that way. Are you ready? Are you ready? I feel like I've got like a halo. Okay, so the second sample that I've been trying this weekend is Lady Whitesnake, also by Stefan Humbert-Lucas. I had not heard a lot about this fragrance. All I had really heard, or all that I understood about this fragrance, was that it was a leather fragrance, which, to be honest, is one of the reasons why I wasn't rushing out to try it, because I don't dislike leather fragrances. In fact, there are a couple in my wardrobe that I really enjoy, but I'm very picky with my leather fragrances, and I just can't wear leather on a regular basis. And there's really only a few that I actually enjoy wearing. So, much to my surprise, at first spritz of this one, I was really taken aback. I was not expecting what I got at all. There is a leather element to this. Say hi, Poppy. Has anyone ever seen, there was a very famous photographer, I think his name was Weitzman or something, and he used to photograph and film his, I think he had Weimaraners, which are very similar to Visualers. And there's this very famous video. I think if you Google Weimaraners and ball, it'll pull up a video of him doing this to his Weimaraners, and they're just following the ball. It's hilarious. Poppy does that too. Anyway, I digress. So there is a leather element to this, but it's not dark or cloying in any way. The note listing claims that there is orange blossom, mandarin and honeysuckle in the opening, and I was so pleasantly surprised to be able to detect the honeysuckle as well as the mandarin in that opening, because I really didn't expect that I would be able to do that. I really just assumed that the leather would take over everything from the beginning to end in this fragrance. I expected that if those notes weren't drowned out by the leather, then they might actually be drowned out by the orange blossom in that opening, because that typically is what happens for me. When there's orange blossom, usually that's the only thing I can smell. You do get that white leather in the opening, but it doesn't take over like leather accords can sometimes do. And it is listed as being a white leather, and I don't know how they've done it, but it actually does smell white. The overall effect is that in that opening you get a very elegant, light but formal smelling perfume. After a little while, those citrusy and floral elements in the opening kind of blend into a creamy leathery accord, which almost leans a little bit gourmand. Excuse me. Go! And I'm guessing that the florals in the mid really help with that creamy element, and the amber accord that's listed also helps to provide a bit more of that sweetness. But even though it gets sort of close to being a gourmand for me, it doesn't quite fully step into gourmand territory, and actually just as it starts to get on the cusp of that, it kind of veers back away from it and becomes more of a leathery white floral amber. If you've been following my channel for a little while, you may have heard me talk about a candle that is made locally in my city by Jarji Fragrances, and it's called Vintage Suede. And that is also a very floral, ambery, leathery scent profile, which I really, really love. It's one of my favorite candles, and I get a similar vibe from Lady Whitesnake. It's not the same, doesn't smell the same, but the combination of the florals with a really soft leather and an amber base really gives a similar vibe. And one of the reasons I really love that scent profile, I'm starting to realize, is because the leather gives a real presence to the fragrance and real body, but at the same time the sillage it feels very soft. After that development with the florals and the amber and the leather, I feel like it definitely gets a little bit more linear and ultimately sort of lands in like some kind of musky, suedey dry down that only really holds a hint of sweetness. The sillage on this is pretty bombastic in that opening and into the mid. Even just for a sample and a spritz on the back of the hand, I could clearly smell it. Even though we went out for a walk and it was kind of breezy and we were by the sea, I could still very clearly detect my scent bubble around me, which I thought was pretty amazing performance for a spritz on the back of the hand. However, I did feel like once it did start to fade after a couple of hours, it died down very quickly to a skin scent. But I would say it held a decent scent bubble for quite a while. So I do remember there being quite a few comments about this being quite an animalic fragrance. And I do have to look for the animalic nuances in this fragrance, but I agree they are definitely there. But they're not barnyardy or anything like that. It's sort of that sort of animalic element that you get from musky accords. However, they just didn't really jump out at me from the get-go. And I don't know if I would have really have noticed that they were there had I not expected them to be there because I'd heard people say that they were there. I think I also did get a hint of like just a tiny hint of smokiness towards the end of the mid dry down as well, before it really turned into that more musky, leathery base. And I feel like I also got a hint of greenness too, but nothing like the greenness that I got in God of Fire, just enough to sort of cut through some of that amber and the muskiness. Do you mind? Overall, I really enjoyed wearing this fragrance, and I think I enjoyed this one slightly more than God of Fire, but I think they're both beautiful fragrances. This one is definitely a little bit more elevated and a little bit more formal. So I think I would like to get a decant of this to just wear it a little bit more. I don't know if I can justify a full bottle of this one either, and the reasoning behind that is simply that because it's a very formal type of fragrance, it's not something that I could see myself wearing necessarily to work or on a daily basis. And therefore, just knowing that I don't have the type of lifestyle that requires a formal fragrance on a regular basis. I don't go out that much and I don't go to fancy events very often. So I don't need that many fancy formal fragrances in my wardrobe. However, I think in the case of both of these fragrances, I really like the presentation, but as beautiful as the bottles are, I don't think I can use that as a justification for buying a bottle. Unless I can get a partial bottle off somebody once they've worn through, you know, 2/3 of it or something like that, maybe in a few years' time, then I might be inclined to pick one up. So they are my two little mini reviews of these two fantastic fragrances from Stefan Humbert Lucas. Have you tried these fragrances? If so, let me know in the comments and what you thought of them. So I think I'm going to go give this puppy dog some more attention because she clearly wants some. And Matt's probably finished watching his video about now. So it might be time to hit the beach before I have to start thinking about packing up and heading home. I'll see you in the next clip.